quite live on YouTube. Oh, now we're live on YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm still letting people in because there's a lot of people here. Okay, everybody is in, Chair.
All right, fine. That brings us to financials.
Go ahead, Rose.
Sorry, I'm trying to go to that page now. Okay, so we're on the accrual basis as a reminder. So the annual administrative fees that were billed out, this is what was billed out, not necessarily collected in January, was $36,000. And then you can see we also have an application fee. That was a Faria Inc. that came in January. The seminars, conferences, the PPE grants. I do want to say you'll see when we get to the grants at the end that we're essentially going to be out of money coming from the IDA, assuming that you pass or approve the ones that we have for this meeting, but then we still have money left in the CRC to be able to use for grants. The checking accounts balances and the CDs were at $696,000 in money in the bank, and we had some accounts payable at year end that was legal fees and some administrative staff fees that were due at year end that are now paid up.
Quick question: what do we have in the CRC as far as leftover grant money?
I think that's. I hate to say it to you, it's in the CRC packet, so I'm not 100% sure. I want to say it was maybe $60,000, $50,000.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll. I don't know where it's appropriate under finances or under old business, new business, but I think we should address that and maybe move that over. It's been a good, beneficial program, and we get a lot of nice response back from people over things we've done. So. I guess we shall wait. We shall take that up in old business. How would that be? Good.
Okay.
All right. That's it for you for financials?
That's it, yeah.
Anybody have any question? I make a motion, we accept the financials as presented.
Make a motion, we accept the financials as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. The chair's report. Well, we've been very, very busy. A lot of new things. A lot of what you would characterize as housekeeping. Updating, going over our policies. New businesses approaching us. Established businesses approaching us, and just the normal order, but it's been a busy year so far. So that's my report. Okay, that brings me to the CEO's report. Rose?
Okay, so as I was writing this, I realized in finishing it up last night, this one wins the prize for my longest report yet. So I apologize, but there's a lot going on. I'm gonna try, I'll talk fast. At last month's meeting, it was not completely clear as to who made and who seconded the motion to approve the annual housekeeping resolution of 2021. So I wanted to confirm on record that Daniel Savona, you made the motion, and that Mike Ham, you seconded it.
I did.
Okay, Mike?
Okay.
Thank you. M&T Bank transfer, we got our second batch of checks from M&T Bank, but they had the wrong address on them this time. So we sent them back and are waiting on corrected checks before switching banks. On the bright side, after months of fighting with Capital One to get a credit card due to issues with mail going to our PO box and no official documents with our physical address on it, we were finally able to secure a credit card with M&T Bank. It was approved on February 11th, and we should expect it in the mail by the end of this week or early next week. The open meetings law, the governor passed an executive order, which includes the extension for public meetings and hearings to be held remotely for another 30 days until February 26th. And as COVID positives are remaining high, We expect all our meetings to remain on Zoom until further notice. If the executive order runs out and it is not renewed, we'll obviously keep you all updated. We received another FOIL request that I'm working with Joe Scott on to complete. Project closeouts. Kingston Hospitality, it was recorded on January 5th and we received copies on the 25th. Rocking Horse Ranch or T-Bar was recorded on January 7th and we received copies on January 27th. Elna Magnetics, this was recorded on January 7th and we received copies on January 27th. Spotted Dog Ventures, Meredith and both May and Meredith and Joe Scott's firm have been in touch or tried to be in touch with company counsel for Spotted Dog Ventures, but she's not been responsive. She has what needs to be done in order to finish closing out the project, but we're still waiting on it. Another potential project has submitted their application for pre-screen. I believe there's also one business in the town of Ulster that is still working on filling out their application to start the pre-screen process. The Director of the Department of Economic Development, Tim Wiedemann, and Deputy Director Kate Heidecker and I are meeting every other Friday to keep in touch on various projects, as well as trying to work together on common goals. It was brought to my attention that we may be due money back from the Schrade study in Ellenville. However, this past week, Director Wiedemann told me that he thought what we had done was very important for the site in Ellenville. Because of the study, he's been able to attract interest in the site and engage in discussions with site selectors that otherwise would not have occurred. This was all before me, and I'm not knowledgeable enough about this yet to speak much on the subject. However, if the board is concerned about the study, Tim said he was happy to discuss with the board at a future meeting. I know that a few of you here had mentioned that we were due money back from this because if there wasn't anything that turned up within 3 years that we were entitled to our money back. But Tim had thought that it was important what we had done and that it wasn't for no reason. So if anybody had more questions, you could let me know and then I can reach out to Tim to provide more clarification. After our first meeting a month ago, Director Wiedemann saw to it that I was added to a healthcare consortium consisting of professionals from the county, SUNY Ulster, and Ulster BOCES and more that is working on the shortage of healthcare professionals needed in our county. This group was of great interest to me as the shortage is something that was brought to my attention in late 2019 by one of our projects. Aside from wanting to make a difference by adding good jobs to the county, I think it's also important that we offer our support to our projects. A couple of years ago, Ulster BOCES lost their CNA teacher due to cost caused by shortage in the industry. This has in turn caused less CNA professionals to be available in the area. Last Thursday, the consortium sent out a survey to local medical agencies to find out exactly what is needed before we can try to fix the problem. Unfortunately, they only got 2 responses so far. So I've subsequently reached out to the projects that we have in the industry, like Westchester Medical, Golden Hill, Woodland Ponds, and Albany Med Emergent Care, and urged them to respond, especially since several of them have expressed concern about the lack of medical professionals in the area. 2 of them have already written back to me since last night and are now looking to respond to the survey and are extremely interested in what we're doing. As you know, we are working diligently on gathering the year-end reporting information from our projects so we can report to New York State by the end of the month. Unfortunately, a number of projects have not sent in all of their information yet, although it was due back January 31st. I've been in touch with our chair of governance about this, and we are sending out letters today with late fees to the following projects: Amthor Welding Service, Golden Hill Acquisitions, which is the old owners, Kingston Medical Properties, Viking Industries, and Ulster NH Realty. Again, this year we've tried very hard to not be punitive, and we did not issue any late fees for those that were late up to 15 days, although our policy calls for it. However, letters are going out to these projects that were late, but have since submitted everything, reminding them of the importance of timely reporting. A few of the projects have submitted everything except their 4th quarter NYS 45s, as they've not been able to get them yet from the payroll companies, and we have not sent late fees or non-compliance letters as they've been keeping in touch and actually trying to resolve the issue. Legislator Brian Cahill, chairman of the Economic Development, Tourism, Housing, Planning, and Transit Committee, has invited us to attend the next committee meeting on March 2nd. It has been his hope that we stay in touch quarterly. Annual site visits. I've finished up the site visits with all of the projects. I'll finish compiling the report along with the information that was reported back by projects for Paris. As a reminder, all of this information will go to the audit committee, and then it'll go to the governance committee for any issues. Our insurance policies are up for renewal next month. We're working on trying to house all of our insurance with one local broker as to ensure that we do not have any lapses in coverage. Earlier this month, I provided the audit committee with an update on post-closing affidavits from projects that are done with construction and finished using their sales tax exemptions. Brooklyn Bottling's affidavit showed that the project went over their estimated cost, so they submitted a payment of $5,595.99 to us. We'll reconcile their affidavit with their audited financials once they're completed, and we're now waiting on responses from Henry Stout, which is Full Moon Resort, Saugerties Hospitality, Landmark Preservation, and Pods. I want to thank all of you for sending back your acknowledgements of fiduciary duties and responsibilities for the IDA and CRC. And we need board approval in order to pay the final invoice from Hodgson Russ in the amount of $7,330.51 for their work during the third and fourth quarter of 2020. A copy of this invoice was sent out to you prior to the meeting, and I have reviewed each line.
Okay, what I'd like is a couple of things. Number one, on the reporting, hopefully we can go through governance. And if we have people who aren't doing that and then come back to us looking for another benefit, they're precluded receiving any sort of benefit until they're in compliance.
Yep.
I don't know what kind of language we need, but fool me once, shame on me, right? Or fool me, whatever kind of thing. The other thing, you vetted them. Do we have, I'd like just maybe Rick and Diane to just, vet them as well. Joe's stuff, because 3 sets of eyes are better than 1 set of eyes, and that's no reflection on you. I'd like to get a motion to pay council's bill contingent on the vetting showing no issues there. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any question on that? And we'll expedite it, Joe, and thank you so much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I need a motion to, are you done?
Thank you very much.
Nope, not done, sorry. Wishful thinking. The audit committee asked me to total the amount of money spent on administrative staff for the Kingstonian, and my best estimate to date is $19,400. This does not include the time spent during board meetings or on meeting documents that may have included the Kingstonian. However, it does include $1,550 on foils so far relating to the Kingstonian. Did you get that, Diane? Okay, because I know you had asked specifically, so I want to make sure you heard it. So with all of the new projects coming in and the constant housekeeping and policy changes that are happening with the IDA and CRC, our firm decided that we needed additional staff for our office. So if you happen to stop in or call the office, please feel free to introduce yourselves to Wendy Quinn. She'll be transitioning into providing more support staff that I need for the IDA and CRC. Ulster County Comptroller Marge Gallagher has asked the agency to participate in her annual risk assessment process as she did last year. Although it's not mandatory, we will be participating in the survey and then in a follow-up interview for transparency purposes. And last, but certainly not least, I've been working over the last couple of months on bringing awareness to the issue that the school districts face with pilots and the tax cap. I've had a few conversations with the New York State Economic Development Council's Executive Director, Ryan Silva, about the issue. He's provided more insight on the subject for me, and it was my understanding that at the time, there was a bill passed a few years ago that went through the state Assembly and Senate, but it did not make it off the governor's desk. The belief is that the bill was not signed by Governor Cuomo because at the time the tax cap formula was temporary and the governor did not want to change a temporary formula. Mr. Silva believes that there's a real chance of getting a bill passed now that the tax cap is permanent. Since our initial conversation on the subject, he has reached out to the original sponsor and co-sponsors of the bill to try to bring it back before the state Senate and Assembly. I've personally had a phone call with Republican State Senator Peter Oberacker and sent him a copy of the bill. He is aware that I've been trying to get in touch with Democratic State Senator Michelle Hinchy and intend to speak with State Senator Jim Skoufis about the matter as well. There's an agreement that education and ensuring that funding for education is a great thing to be a bipartisan issue. So I'll continue to keep in touch with the senators about the issue and will be urging the Ulster County Legislature to try to push it as well when we meet with the EDTHPT committee next month. And I'm personally grateful to the board of the Kingston Consolidated School District for bringing the issue to our attention when discussing the Kingstonian pilot. And I look forward to our agency doing everything we can to help the issue so that we can help economic development in Ulster County and assist school districts and IDAs throughout New York State.
That's great work, Rose. Great follow-up there. Thank you.
Yep.
Rose, I
That's
have
it,
one
finally.
question from your report.
Yes.
I think the audit committee had put in place different fees or had suggested different fees for FOIL requests.
Yep. The
Did that go
governance.
through, or was that stalled because one of the FOIL requesters had a major problem with?
Yeah,
with it?
yeah, it went through governance and it was stalled before coming to the board so that council could review it to be sure that we weren't doing anything against the law.
Okay. So it's still being reviewed, Joe?
Yes, I'm working on that, Rick. Thank you.
Is that it, Rose?
That's it, finally.
Can I get a motion for concurrence and receipt of the CEO's report?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Faye. Can I have a second? Anyone on the question? I made the second.
Thank you.
Anyone on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Brings us to committee reports. Dr. Einen, audit.
All right, I have a few things to report on today. As you've heard, we've been busy going through all of our policies between governance and audit and making recommendations for amendments to some of these policies to reflect where we are right now and what we think is necessary to do our work. I'll start with low-key Brill. You'll see the report on page 17. What happened during our audit meeting, and this came out of our last month's meeting, is that we asked the question, Rick asked the question, to clarify criteria for reporting to us on these jobs. And so Kevin Loki came and visited with us, and we had a good conversation with him, a long one, about how this reporting is put together for us each month. And essentially what we learned is that he will get weekly head counts from the contractor, but what happens is they're using it on daily sign-in logs that then become part of the weekly count, that then become part of the monthly report that comes to us. And what we discovered is, and this is because we made a decision as a board, not this board, but previously, to reduce the number of actual site visits that Kevin will do on any given site, because it was a cost issue at that time for the board. And so what he will do is bi-monthly, he will show up on the job site and actually look at the sign-in logs that each of the contractors do to sign in, et cetera. And what we've discovered is that, for example, this month, you'll see in our report on page 17, is that you see a 90% monthly compliance average, and that is based on weekly labor reports that are submitted to him any given month. But what we also saw is that when he actually did the site visit at the end of January, 42% was the compliance rate. So clearly, what's happening is these weekly logs right, are getting pulled together. They become the monthly compliance rate based on weekly logs reported to Loki Brill. But when he actually does site visits, you can see that there's some discrepancy there, only because he's there on that particular day to capture the information. So one of the things that we want to do in audit, we'll continue to have this conversation and with governance, is looking at perhaps increasing the month to a monthly visit on these job sites and not bi-monthly, given some of the information that we're starting to get and have a better understanding of what we're really looking at. So I just want to be clear that you're seeing a 90% monthly compliance for January based on what's been submitted to Loki Brill, but the actual site visit showed 42% compliance. The overall compliance since the inception of the project for this group for INS is 79.72%. So they're just right under that 80% mark overall as a project. The other thing that we're going to discuss further around Loki Brill and what we're doing is Jimmy asked the question around contractors and subcontractors and 1099s. Why is that important? Because if folks are on 1099s, there's insurance issues related to that. And we need to get a better handle on who those workers might be and also around wages. So I think that's pretty much a summary of where we are with Loki Brill. Jimmy, anything you wanted to add based on the conversation we had?
I just have a quick question, and I get it. You could pick a day where you go onto a job site and whatever, people aren't there kind of thing. But if that ends up being the case, how actual is that 79 point whatever number? Because look, you're never going to get it. We're never going to get it perfect. It's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, clearly.
I asked, do we make them sign an affidavit, anything like that? I mean, I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel.
Right. I think these are the things, Jimmy, frankly, we need to continue to talk about in audit. I know Rose and I were back late last night with Kevin email trying to kind of sort some of these things out. And it is it's a little confusing at times. But I think what we would like to do is, we don't have, I think the contract with them ended in November, but I think we just roll into the next year with them. And I think this is an opportunity for us to think about what we're asking them to do and the information that we want to get reported back and the frequency of that in terms of site visits, and look at redoing the contract and putting those things in the contract.
Just something, and I say simple because it was part of my purview myself, Mr. Ham, over the years is, if you're going to have an employee log, then you can have a certified payroll. If one doesn't match up with the other, then there's a concern. But again, these are all good ideas and good working points. I think some of the changes that have been put in place, and I can't tell you how good I think the audit committee is doing on this stuff, because it's not easy. We're essentially changing a culture a little bit, and we're going to have some stumbles along the way, but good job with your committee.
I wanted to add, part of the reason it was 42% and it did increase for that site visit is some of the workers didn't have their driver's licenses on them, so those licenses were submitted back to Loki Brill for whoever they had the names for after the fact. And then I did also want to add that when I'm sure most of you remember, when we did this, we didn't really know what we were doing yet, and we were trying to get an idea. And I think now we've done it for a year. We understand what's going on. We see where some of the issues are. So like Diane said, it is a good point to now reevaluate, and maybe we should change the terms of what we're doing.
Well, look, we're going to continually be tweaking until we get what is best serves the board, the county, whatever. In a perfect world, everybody would be 100% honest and upfront, and but we're doing our due diligence, so we're further ahead than we were a couple of years ago, right? Okay, Doctor, do you need anything else?
I have a couple of the amendments that resolutions to change some language in some of our policies, so I'll try to get through these pretty quickly. On page 18, we have the background check policy. and we would like to make an amendment to that policy, which you can find on page 21. Essentially, what we talked about was the fact that for application submission, we wanted to look at that. We have, part of the requirement is that we require audited finances to be submitted to us during application submission. And what we realized that for smaller companies, this can be a terrific burden for them financially, because a single audited financials is usually $10,000. So if we're requiring 3, that is $30,000 potentially that the applicant has to pay to submit the audited financials. So what we talked about is you'll see on page 21 is to make an amendment to this to reflect our concern for that, and saying that, and this will be in section 4, the applicant submits 3 years of audited financial statements, provided, however, if the applicant has 5 million or less of assets. So in other words, we are putting this at $5 million or less. You don't necessarily have to submit audited financials. Your tax returns are adequate for us, although we have the discretion to require the audited financials if we see anything through our due diligence that make us think that we might need the actual audited financials. And then this way we have leeway to do one thing or the other, but we're hoping that with the tax returns, which a tax accountant will be signing off on, it's verified and vetted that way, that we have some protection there, but we have the discretion to require the audited financials if we think we need to. So that is the amendment we would like to make to this policy.
Okay, would you like to put that in a quick form and make a motion, Chair? And that way I can get a second and we can move on.
Yeah, I'd like to make a resolution that we change the background check policy to reflect that applicants that submits 3 years of audited financial statements, provided, however, the applicant has 5 million or less of assets, and that financial statements are not required unless requested by the agency.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rick. Anything on the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a roll. I need a roll call, Jimmy, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
James Malcolm,
Yes.
Diane Einen, Faye Storms,
Yes.
Michael Ham,
Yes.
Orlando Reese,
Yes.
Daniel Savona,
Yes.
Richard Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next policy that we want to make some recommendations for change is a procurement policy, and you'll find that on page 22. And if you go to page 25, you will see the proposed amend language to that. And Mike, if you don't mind, would you walk us through that in terms of what you wanted to, we discussed about breach of contract and why this is important to include in our policy?
Yeah, so we know from what we went through here back a couple months ago with, what was the name of the company there? don't remember. The Ellenbogen, okay? So we've seen how that was problematic for us. So what it is I took language that we're used to doing, you know, in contracts, and Jimmy's probably familiar with it too. Now, I did present this language, and I did say to have Joe take a look at this, because Joe could probably tone it, you know, squish it down a little bit. Mine's a little long, and Joe could probably get to the point a little better than I do. That's what he does. So in it, it just says basically all parties shall perform their obligations strictly in accordance with this agreement. In case of violation of this agreement, the breaching party B shall compensate the non-breaching party A for the losses and the responsible for all other responsibilities as imposed by law, whether or not this agreement is terminated. The non-breaching party A could notify in writing requests to rectify and correct such breach of contract. If the breaching party B cannot take any action to satisfy the non-breaching party A and rectify and correct such breach within 14 days upon the issuance of the written notice, the non-breaching party A could take the actions pursuant to this agreement or any other measures in accordance with laws. If Party B cannot repay any advance pursuant to this agreement, Party B shall pay a rate of 0.2% per day for any outstanding amount of advance to Party A, calculated from the request date for repayment by Party B, and shall also indemnify Party A in full against economic damages due to the breach of this agreement. Failure to perform in conformity with this procurement policy shall and will constitute a breach of the contract and shall result in breaching party to be responsible for all damage incurred by the agency.
I don't know how you could squeeze that down any, Mike.
Yeah. Sometimes Jim, the world we live in, the broader we have it,
Yeah,
the better the paint job.
I always like the words, but not limited to.
Yeah, exactly.
But listen, so if council would be as eloquent to give us a quick synopsis of what the chair of governance just presented. Yeah, good luck with this one, Joe.
Well, Chair, what I did was I used the language verbatim. I did correct there were a couple of tweaks that I needed to make. But if you go to page 25 of your PDF, I actually have the language outlined there, but I have introductory language. You see how I say under section 6, I say language in substantially the following form shall be used. And that way that gives me some flexibility to work with Rose to put what we need to put in the actual document.
Okay, so in lay terms, all right, so everybody understands the motion we're making.
That's what I thought Mike would do.
Yeah, so just a quick overview. This gives us the authority to.
Right, well, to collect fees and to basically go after someone who has defaulted on a contract with us.
Okay.
I mean, candidly, the Ellen Bog, the contract that Mike was talking about, I mean, it was a small contract.
Yes.
We now have model language that will drop into everything. We have language like this, actually more expansive in our straight lease documents, but they're large, complicated transactions. So we're protected with this kind of language in our typical straight lease documents. What this does is bring that same level to smaller procurement contracts.
Okay. So everyone has an understanding of that. Can I get a motion to adopt that change?
Yeah, I make a motion that we adopt and accept the new section 6. It's going to be added to the procurement policy as reflected on page 25.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call?
James Malcolm,
Yes.
Diane Einen,
Yes.
Faye Storms,
Yes.
Michael Ham,
Yes.
Orlando Reese,
Yes.
Daniel Savona,
Yes.
Richard Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
stuff.
you. And Chair, I have one more policy change recommendation. We've been busy. If you go to page 26, proposed changes are to the enforcement of projects policy. And if you go to page 29 in your packet, you will see it's rather long, but what you'll see is any text that is underlined is the actual addition or amendment that we want to make to the existing policy. So if you go down here, some of this is really, a lot of this is about aligning the policy to our actual practices. So if you go to section B5, for example, we're changing from within 60 days to 31 days, because that reflects actually how much time that Rose needs then to take this information and create reports that she needs to do. The same is true in B, applicant requirements, number 6, again, taking it from 60 days to a 31-day requirement. If you go down to page 30, the same thing, number 7 is changing it from 60 to 31 days. If you go further down on page 30, B, section 4A, under monitoring, number 1, what we would like to do is, again, to reflect our practice, which is we actually perform a monitoring visit of every active project at least every year, because that is what we do. So that is the proposed change. Underneath number 3, Rose, you want to talk a little bit more about what you're requiring here for the purposes of having information you need for reporting?
Yeah, the only thing that we were really adding here was what we already do, which is asking for copies of the payroll journal summarized by employee, showing the hours worked and the gross wages totaled by employee and project applicant for the year in question. The reason for that is without the payroll journal and the hours worked, you're unable to calculate and verify the full-time equivalent. So we would take that information to actually figure out the full-time equivalent. The rest of what's here is pretty much what was already in the policy. We're just stating it a little bit more clearly, as well as outlining that it's at this moment $100 for the cost of the CPA verification rather than just blanketly saying CPA verification.
Thanks, Rose.
Mhm.
And then the last proposed change is at the bottom of page 31, section, you're in C, number 1. So as you know, we have required 80% compliance. And we were talking about for compliance related to existing jobs and jobs, compliance related to jobs by the applicant. So what we had a long discussion about the fact that when we do our cost benefit analysis, we base the cost benefit analysis on 100% compliance for existing jobs and projected new jobs. Yet we benchmark at 80% for the project. And we believe strongly that we need to increase the percentage related to projected new jobs. Because if we are at 80%, that bar seems rather low. And the gap between 100% to 80% on any given project and number of jobs can be somewhat significant. And we also don't want to disincentivize our projects, right, to really be aggressive in terms of their commitment to projected new jobs. And so we would like to increase it to 90% of projected jobs have been retained or created after 3 years from closing, with 100% for existing jobs. And will be subject to review and possible enforcement action. So we are proposing that change to our policy.
Okay, can I get a, sorry.
Joe wanted in, yeah, sorry.
Yes, sorry, Chair, may I make a comment?
Sure you can.
Yeah, thank you. When I prepared this language and, I discussed it obviously with Rose, you'll see that the way I address the retaining portion of the change is that I didn't use the word retaining because you'll recall that there was quite a bit of discussion some time ago about, what the definition of retained jobs are. So I basically said, maintain its original job employment level. The issue there, though, is that oftentimes our pilots, 10 years, sometimes longer, we might want to be thinking a little bit about the evolution of a business and or an industry and whether there's a change in their technology that results, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, of a change in employment levels, and whether this will actually create a negative impact because it won't provide for or allow for or promote technological improvements in whatever the business is using. So I just want to flag some of these issues for you. The other thought was, 80% to 90%, what that potentially will do, and I think you're being responsible, is that it'll potentially increase the amount of time that you spend with enforcement issues, and that's certainly something that you've taken very seriously. But obviously there's a cost to that. So and as Diane properly indicated, this isn't a bright line test. I mean, if they fail to meet the 90%, that doesn't necessarily mean that you implement, you sick the lawyers on them, so to speak, at the risk of being flippant. it still gives you flexibility to have discussions with the project applicant and to and get a better understanding of what's going on. So those were my comments as I looked at that language.
Well,
Thanks,
that-
Right. But Joe, we're looking for FTEs, so over long term, correct? That's why they're getting the incentives. So if because of technological advances, they're losing those jobs, then I think the incentives have to be lessened for them. Because, you know, I mean, that's something, I don't think because they have better technology that, you know, they should not be able to provide the jobs that they promised.
Yeah, I think that council and chairs, narrative on that is clear. We want to have the ability to deal with it, but like a couple of these other ones, Faye, that have appeared before us, who would tell you that, well, it's because of COVID, and we're looking at numbers from 2019, not
Right.
2020.
We know, we had the interview.
Yeah.
It gives us a lot of latitude, but again, it plays right into this group talking as a whole about mentoring and things like that. And there's no "I didn't know" kind of deal. So
Right. And I think too, we have the option, and it's in there that, we will review it and we have options, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to have enforcement actions taken against you. And I think,
Right.
That's in there but I think it's good to have a bar that is high and reflects, I mean, we are giving the cost benefit analysis based on 100% compliance on projected new jobs, and 80% certainly seems to be too low. And so I think it's important that we change the language here.
yeah, no, okay. Well, listen, can I get a motion to accept the changes presented? Can I
Make
get,
the motion.
I'll make the motion.
okay. Rick, will you second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, anything on the question?
Yeah, the other point around 80 and 90 and changes to technologies in the case of mergers, where, I mean, I think that's what happened with our two large hospitals. They had a merger and jobs decreased significantly from what was promised individually. So I don't have a solution for that, but constant monitoring and querying the applicants, well, why? And in the case of some where it's significant, and it was with the hospitals, we may decide, to Faye's point, well, we're going to change the pilot. Now, I don't know how we accomplish that
Oh, you put it,
legally, if
you
that
put
needs
it
to be
in the-
part of the
the application.
documentation, but just a thought.
yeah, you put it in the application, it just, what it says is this board is willing to work with people, and sometimes things come about and there's nothing you can do about it. So it shouldn't be punitive.
Right.
But again, on the other side of that, it's very important that the applicant, whoever receives the incentive, is continually up to date with us. So it's a good preventative measure. I give audit a lot of credit for being proactive on this issue. So I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor, we're going to do a roll call vote.
James Malcolm,
Yes.
Diane Einen,
Yes.
Faye Storms,
Yes.
Michael Ham,
Yes.
Orlando Reese,
Yes.
Daniel Savona,
Yes.
Richard Jones.
Yes.
All right, and thank you, everyone. And last, just for our next meeting, just to give you an update, because we've been rolling through these policies as governance has. Our next review will be of the local construction labor policy, our UTEP code of ethics, and interest and deposit policy. So that'll be on our docket moving forward. So thank you, Chair. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Clear eyes. Good job. Good job to everybody on audit. All right, that brings us to finance. Faye?
There is no finance committee meeting this month, so no report, Chair.
All right, thank you. Brings us into governance, Mr. Ham.
Thank you, Chair. There was no meeting in January for governance. We will be scheduling a meeting coming up here in March. Also, we'll be reporting back to the chair and to the entire board on the community benefits and the mentoring program. That's my
That's good
report, Chair.
stuff. That's good stuff. We're expanding our horizon with that, Mike. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to old business, status of pending projects.
Joe, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. If you go to page 32, and I've outlined there the status of pending projects. No change on Wildberry. Kingstonian, we took action at the January meeting, and we're just waiting to hear back from the company on the next steps with respect to that matter. Afiria, we've adopted the public hearing resolution again at the January meeting, and we're just waiting to schedule a public hearing once they finalize their application and we have our file complete. And then Magruder Solar is on the agenda today for possible consideration of a public hearing resolution. And that's my report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Can I get a motion to accept Council's report as presented?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. That brings us, I guess, into new business. Joe?
I'll,
Okay.
so that's all right. So Magruder Solar is here to present their application. I don't know who from the group wants to speak. I know there's a few of them here. If you could give us a brief overview of the project, and then we can go into the application a little bit further.
Yeah, so Rose, if you don't mind, I'll just spend a minute talking about CS Energy, and then I'll pass it on to Matt Tripoli, who will talk about the project in specifics. Does that work for everybody?
Sounds great.
Great. Okay, so my name is Eric Millard. I'm Chief Commercial Officer with CS Energy. Nice to meet you all. Appreciate you having us here this morning. I'll give you a brief overview of CS Energy. So we develop and design and build community solar and utility scale solar projects across the country. We're active in about 14 different states, but we're mostly active here in the Northeast region. So we're headquartered here in New Jersey, but we have a big presence in New York. We actually opened an office in Albany last year. Actually, the lease started on April 1st last year, which was terrible timing, but we've established a really good presence up here. We have about 50 full-time employees working in New York State, in addition to employing several hundred other construction laborers on our projects as well, either through direct hiring or via subcontractor. It's important to note that we're not just developers. We actually design and build and provide ongoing warranty and O&M services for projects as well. So we're around for a long time. We're not folks that are going to be just developing and then walking away before the projects are constructed. We're in it for the long haul, which is why it's really important for us to establish really good relationships with the communities. In New York, we've built about 200 megawatts of projects so far over the last several years. We have about 250 megawatts of projects under construction currently as we speak. In all of those projects, community relationships and stakeholder engagement is really important. Developing strong relationships in the community is really critical for us because we're going to be around for a long time. And our reputation is extremely important. And so IDA pilots are a great way for us to help us contribute meaningfully to the community, establishing a comprehensive community benefits package that benefits all the stakeholders involved, while also giving us the certainty that we need to get our projects financed and ultimately get them constructed and keep our people working. So with that, I wanted to pass it over to Matt Tripoli, who's our Director of Project Development, to give you all an overview of the specific project, which is a 5 megawatt project in Shawangum called Magruder Solar. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Can everybody hear me? Great. Okay, well, yeah. Yep. So this is Matt Tripoli, Director of Project Development with CS Energy. So we've been working on a project in the town of Shawangum since late 2018. So we initially contemplated doing a large utility scale solar project in town, on about 100 acres of property on the very far eastern edge of the town. There's a large Central Hudson transmission line that runs through the town in that area, and we thought it was a good place to develop a project of that size. So we brought the project forward to the town in 2019, and they had passed a solar law where they wanted to see smaller solar projects, some more community scale solar projects. And after some back and forth with the planning and zoning boards, decided it was best to revisit our plans for the area and look at a smaller project. So we kind of took the downtime that came with everything that happened in 2020 and went back to the drawing board with Central Hudson and have brought forward an application to the town for a community solar project. So probably similar to what you've seen most in Ulster County for the solar projects that have been built thus far. So we're looking at a 20-acre solar project. Eric described it as a 5 megawatt solar project. Again, on the eastern edge of town. So it's on a portion of the site we were initially planning for the larger solar project. But we think it's a good way to bring forward a project that has a smaller footprint, but does match up with the town's intentions around their solar law. We found in developing projects throughout the state that the certainty associated with pilot agreements is extremely important for financing. Definitely want to be upfront with this presentation that the town, there are multiple ways to approach a pilot for renewable energy projects in New York State. The town of Shangham and the school district where the project is located have opted out of the real property tax law 487, which is one avenue that we'd have to enter into pilot agreements with the taxing jurisdictions. And the other is through boards such as yourselves, through IDA related agreements. So we, as a company, have been involved in several IDA derived pilot agreements for solar projects throughout the state just within the last year or two. So happy to be bringing this application forward and talking to your board about what we're intending to do in the town of Shangham. So, thank you. And then do have my colleague, Greg Samillo, who's on the phone as well. So he's going to be prepared to chat about our application in more detail, but I don't know if before we dive into that, Rose, if you wanted to open up for questions or anything of that nature about just the kind of high level or company or the project we're looking at in the area.
I have a question. Actually, it's a follow-up from the pre-screen. And I'm not really sure if it was you I was speaking with or who I was speaking with, but given the fact that there's no real retainage of jobs, it's solar. I mean, you plug it in, you unplug it. I don't want to make it sound that simple. It's not my purview. But I know we did discuss using local contractors, local labor. You spoke to me about relationships that you had with trade unions in New Jersey and things you had done there. I want to know where that stands in the process, because I've actually reached out to a couple of people and have yet to hear anything back. So maybe you can give me a little bit of an update on where you stand.
Sure. I'll take this. I'll take that question. So yeah, so for this project, we're very comfortable committing to using local labor, assuming it's available, and we're comfortable committing to hiring union labor force to build the project. So we're, I think I mentioned to you, in New Jersey, we work exclusively with union contractors. That has extended up into the lower Hudson Valley, where we build, where we built some projects, solar projects in New York to date. So we actually had a number of conversations with both the electrical IBEW union and then the laborers union over the last couple of weeks in New York. They're obviously very interested in participating in solar projects statewide in New York. And so we've discussed this project with both of those unions, and they're which honestly, those are the two primary unions that we utilize for projects. With the laborers kind of do the nuts and bolts of installing the metal racking system, and the electricians connect all the wires. So they're aware of the project and excited to work with us to fly
Being
labor.
a guy who's been around a little while and know, you know, the way it's been described to me, because I know there's a million different ways to set the bases, the panels, whatever. But there's clearly work in there for, you know, operating engineers if you have
Yep.
to draw some pile. There's
Yep.
work for the pile driver there. And, you know, this is kind of a rehash of what we talked about, but I want to know what the status is at this point. Have you had communications with the trades in this area?
So we haven't spoken to any locals in the area recently, but we've had conversations with the statewide folks at both the IBEW and the Laborers Union, who are all based in Albany, about supporting our projects. And we are currently hiring several union contractors right now on projects that we're building in the Albany area. So we have not yet done any outreach to union subcontractors in the area, because we're still, you know, a good 6 to 9 months away from starting construction on this project. We would traditionally begin that outreach a little bit sooner to when we start construction, but you know, I'm comfortable committing that we will use union labor, and we want to go to local contractors first in the region to support that need. And you know, once we get a little closer to construction, we'll have the designs a little bit further baked, and we can send those out to those contractors to start getting bids. You know, once we're in it.
Understand, I'm not lobbying for anyone here. It's just, you know, with potential changes on the horizon in 2022 with legislation that the governor had passed regarding public funding and prevailing wage, it's a good idea to get out in front of it.
Yep.
But I, for one, as a board member, would be more comfortable if I knew, you know, we're being asked here to move your project along to a public meeting, a public hearing. I'd be a little bit more comfortable if I had an update and that I knew that there was, I don't care who you talk to in Albany. That's, if you want to do a statewide agreement, that's fine. You deal with the New York State building trades. But in this area, you should be reaching out to people in this area and moving the process forward. And I conveyed that to reps, people who are repping your company. So again, I don't know where it stands, but given the fact that there's no FTEs here, I think it's a good thing that people will be getting paid a prevailing wage to do the work. So, you know, that falls on you to satisfy that.
Understood.
Also-
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, just to make sure I understand the ask. So you're looking for us to actually make contact with the contractors, local contractors in Ulster County, and kind of like what
Contact with the trade unions first, if you're looking to use union labor, and they can give you a list of contractors or the contractors associations, whether it's in Albany, Westchester, the Hudson Valley, but there's no movement on that yet. And I'm more comfortable if I see, you know, to me, that's a commitment.
Got it. Understood.
Also, do you have the full support of the town that you're going to be doing this project in?
Yeah, so we've been working with the town since 2018. You know, Supervisor Volk is aware that we are, you know, presenting to the board today. And he's been very frank with us that, you know, that he believes that the town opted out of the 487 pilot, you know, very deliberately. But he understands that we have, you know, the ability to go to the IDA to, you know, to seek a pilot agreement. So what we've been doing over the course of the last few months in regards to working with the town is, yeah, frankly, I think, you know, the town assessor is looking at everything that's going on around with solar projects in the area. He's doing his due diligence, his research, looking at how projects are being assessed. You know, he's been very transparent and open with us and wanted to work with us. So he recommended a third-party appraisal firm that we could hire to provide him with some additional information about how we're seeing how that appraiser is seeing solar projects being looked at across New York. So we're that report hasn't been issued yet, but we expect in the next week or two to be presenting that to the town and to the town assessor. Again, just to provide some more information about how projects are being looked at across the state. So I think our intention is just to try to do stuff like that to try to keep the town engaged. We hope that kind of our ideal path forward is that we would work with your board on a pilot agreement that would kind of set the pilot rates, and that we would be presenting a broader kind of host community benefit package that would hopefully address the concerns the town had. The pilot agreement was just a handout to our company, and that we're not, that it's just to increase our profitability, if you will. So we want to try to get everybody on kind of the same path to make it more of a win-win overall.
Yeah,
So
and
what would be,
So,
oh, I'm sorry. I just had a follow-up to that question.
Yeah, sure.
If I may. What would be your give to us for not having full-time equivalent jobs for the next, I believe, 20 years of the pilot, or 30, was it 30 that you were asking for?
30.
Yeah, 30 is what we put in the application. Yeah. So I think we definitely recognize that that's the the variance from your approach that we would be asking for is around full-time equivalent employment over the life of the facility. So something Eric didn't really get to look, talking about his projects or what we're doing currently in the state is that there is a huge push to do more renewables in New York State. Currently the state's current workforce is probably meeting what needs to be done, but there's probably, in all likelihood, with the amount of solar and wind that New York is trying to get done in the next 10 years, there's a real potential that a lot of that labor would have to come in from out of the state. So we think that there's a lot of workforce development opportunities that certainly could help make sure that there's good jobs being created in New York State for New York State individuals to work on these projects.
Well, this would be specifically Ulster County, since that's who we're concerned about is Ulster County. And we'd like to see a number or something showing exactly what you're planning on doing monetarily for the absence of full-time jobs going forward.
Yes. No, absolutely. That's definitely a good point. So I think we're starting to just poke around, talking to the Ulster County Tech School, the BOCES programs, just to try to find where those workforce development opportunities can be most efficiently applied. But I think we'd like to bring something forward to the board, a future meeting with more specifics about what we'd like to do as part of that.
Matt, can I also put you directly in touch with a couple of folks out of the county executive's office who had some good ideas as far as some workforce development and green technology?
Yeah, that would be wonderful, Rose. I really appreciate that.
Great.
Yeah. So
Matt, a couple of things. When we met, I think you were at the meeting, the pre-screen meeting.
Yep.
From speaking for myself, I made it pretty clear that unless the town supervisor was on board with us going forward, because he couldn't, because they opted out sometime in the past, about 5 years ago, that unless he was supportive of this and let us know that in some vehicle, I couldn't see myself being supportive of obviating or transgressing the town's decision to opt out. So that was one thing. The second thing is we had talked briefly about how much, if this did go forward with the town support, how much you would be willing to pay to the town in terms of per kilowatt hour, what portion is going to go back to the town. And you had mentioned a range of numbers, and I don't see anything in the documentation where that's nailed down. And then the third thing, and there are probably many other things, actually the third and fourth thing is it's got to be local labor in accordance with what the IDA does, local, in this case, union labor, I would think. So you're going to have to come up with a way of, Jim, and I'll defer to the two.
No, we're not. I made a reference to the union people and prevailing wage, given what's coming down the line.
Sorry.
No one's shut out of this thing. You're not defined by if you're in the union or not a union labor person.
Okay.
As long as, for our purposes, it's a prevailing wage.
Okay, yeah, you've mentioned that before to me and I can't get it through my head, but prevailing wage. So Matt, we would need that. But most importantly is the support from the community. I don't want to be in a public hearing, and I think we're way too early in terms of setting a date. There's so much more that needs to be nailed down. But I would not want to be in a public hearing where town supervisor stands up or the assessor stands up and says we're against it, and we already told you that. It just doesn't fly for me. And the 30-year is out of the question again in my mind. The state program either provides for either 10 or 15 years. So I wouldn't want to see this idea go any further than what the state program would have provided for had the town opted in. And I think it's 10, but I know our attorney is checking that.
Rick, it's 15. It's 15.
Okay, 15. So
Yep.
not willing to go any more than that.
Okay.
So I think you have a lot more work to do. And I'm sure you have, it's just not reflected here. And so my recommendation, and I don't want to close with any discussion, but, get back together again with the pre-assessment team to work on the details that we need, or that I would need to feel comfortable to even set a public hearing.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to address a few quick points. So, yeah, I think the first one is, we have entered into longer. We have entered into 30-year agreements with other IDAs throughout the state for solar projects. I just want to make sure that we bring that up. I understand your point about wanting to stick to what is contemplated under the state law specifically for renewable energy facilities. The one other thing we did in our application committed to annual sales in Ulster County of 75%. There wasn't, I guess, a field to specifically highlight what we would be doing for Shawangum in particular, but I think the intention would be to, have the first 30 days or so of sales be specifically targeted to residents of the town, and then if we can't fill up the subscription, move on to the wider Ulster County area, and if we can't fill up the subscription after that, move on to other residents that have to be Central Hudson utility customers are the only people who can pay for the bill credits generated by these facilities. So all the kind of sales from the facility would be within the Central Hudson territory, which isn't too far afield from Ulster County, but it does go out a little bit overall. But yeah, and hear you 100% on. I don't want to be at a public meeting. We've worked hard to keep a good rapport going with Supervisor Volk and other folks in the town, and we're endeavoring to try to bring something forward that they can support in some way, or at least not be against, because we think that's important as well, because we're looking to bring a project forward that's going to be part of the community for a long period of time.
For the applicant, this is a process. So
yep.
You're going to come to us with best case scenario. We're going to look at it and ask you for a little more. And I don't see there being any issues in you coming back with the information we're looking for, and then we have to make a decision based on, where we're coming from. So I appreciate your candor with it.
Yep, understand. Appreciate yours.
Who else do we have here? Anyone? Rick, are you waiting to ask another question, Rick?
No, I was just going to urge the company to sit with us again to work out the excruciating details that we need in order to feel comfortable.
Well,
I'd be happy to be part of that. As I told you, I think the last meeting 4 years ago, I was involved in the Town of Rochester project, and myself and one other person negotiated the deal with the company that eventually got the contract, all the details, yada, 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 including many of the details at the planning board level, the specifics encompassed by the town's solar code. So I could dust off my old stuff, but I'm very familiar, and I know Joe Scott is very familiar with how these things get negotiated. But key to it is getting the town approval. I can't tell you how difficult it was to get everybody on board.
Okay, well, look, there's a lot. Hey, Mike, Pam?
Chair, I just have a little input. For me to move ahead to a public hearing on this, there's not enough information for me at this time. I'm not saying it's a bad job, a good job, whatever. I'm just saying that, I have like 5 or 6 questions that I have sitting on my sheet that I think, if touching base on what Rick says, they fall back to the pre-screen committee. I'd like to convey my questions over to the pre-screen committee to get those answered.
I'll tell you what I do. You know your questions better than anybody. So what I'll do is I will take my position in the pre-screen. I'll move away from that. And why don't you sit in for me?
That'd be great, Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So to the developer, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll get with you after this call is done today and try to coordinate our schedules and give you a little time to come up with the information we're asking for and then move forward. I think it's a good project, and I think you got some vision there, because they are talking about renewables and green and everything else. I believe one of the things our county executive had on his 2021 State of the County just yesterday was a lot of conversation about green and renewables. So thank you for your time. This isn't a bump in the road. It's just part of the process. Okay?
Understand. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. And if we have anybody else who's not on the pre-screen, typically what we'll do is we'll ask the board members for questions and then we'll convey them during the meeting. We got a pretty good group there. Rick he'll haunt you. I'm telling you, that guy will haunt you. Look at him up there. So that's that. So thank you again very much. I appreciate that. And that brings us to PPE grants for board consideration.
Open the pages here. We have McGillicuddy's Tap House and the Stone Pony Deli. And these, I think, should be we have these as the only 2 grants for the IDA, because after this, we're almost out of money for what was set aside for the grant program. And I wanted to bring up McGillicuddy's was one of the ones that had to revise their application with the receipts that they had sent us, but they revised the items that they were asking for reimbursement on, and we've vetted all of the receipts.
Okay. Has everyone else gotten an opportunity to look at the applications? All right. Do we need a roll call or can we just, okay, I make a motion to accept the applications as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to public comment, agenda items only. I don't see anyone in the waiting room looking or raising their hand or anything?
Nope.
Okay. That being the case, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. What we'll do is we'll take a 5-minute break in between the meetings in case anyone has to do anything. And we will return back here at, I believe, 11:10. So Rose, if you want to tell them to turn off the recording.